Hey everyone, welcome to the second annual Boosemas special. If you don't know what Boosemas is, or if you just recently subscribed or discovered my channel, basically it's just a big special where I talk about canceled or non-imported video games. And this time around, we're going to be including other canceled products or movies and just a bunch of other stuff, really. This one's going to be big, and I hope you guys will enjoy. But before we do, let's go ahead and reminisce about Boosemas 2018. First annual one, the one that I had the most trouble with because I was doing it literally by daily, and it was just horrible. I am more prepared this time, and I am happily going to tackle this with a smile on my face. But this one was a doozy. It was the first one, and there are definitely some growing pains that I still need to, grow out of. But hopefully you guys will enjoy it nonetheless. So please sit back, relax, and enjoy Boosemas 2018 as we move forward to the 2019 edition. I love you guys so much. Goodbye. December. What a lovely month. It's the official time of the holiday season, despite what Walmart has been telling you since, October. No, seriously, me and my girlfriend were at Walmart one time, and we saw, Christmas trees just, hanging out in the front of the store. Like, it's Halloween time, motherfuckers. Get the fuck out! Anyways, what am I doing? Oh, right. So, yeah, it's Christmas time. And if you don't celebrate Christmas, well, it's still the holiday season. And if you don't celebrate any of the holidays, well, then shut the fuck up and let me explain this video. So I've been meaning to do some sort of holiday, special for all of y'all for a long time, but I could never really figure out what I want to do. I was like, well, I guess I could do something like a Christmas commercial special thing, but that was boring. And then I thought, oh, why not mascots? And I was like, nah, I don't have enough furry viewers. And then I finally came up with the idea of just talking about canceled video games and video game consoles and anything that was just Japan exclusive or it only came out around one region or something like that. The things that were never given to us for Christmas on the holidays or whatever. Whatever the fuck. Look, listen, this is clearly a Christmas special. Let's not dance around it, okay? I'm just trying to be inclusive. Anyways, for these next 25 days, yes, I know I've missed a couple of days already. Give me a fucking break. I just came up with this idea 2 hours ago. I'll be making quick little videos based on the things we gamer girls missed out on during the holiday season, starting with my favorite Japanese exclusive failure, the 64DD. What is the 64DD? Well, it was Nintendo's death throes against Sony that came too little, too late. See, it all started in 1995. Nintendo was practically at the mercy of Sony, and yes, I know a lot of you Nintendo fanboys like to think differently, but in the 90s, there was far more interest in Sony's PlayStation than there was for the Nintendo 64. Sony had a head start in the race too, releasing 2 years earlier in Japan than Nintendo 64 did. With their head start, Sony quickly became a scary force to be reckoned with for Nintendo, and they knew the brand recognition alone was not going to win over everyone immediately. I mean, look at this baby. It's a CD. Let me tell you, me owning a console that uses CDs as a kid made me feel like a fucking man. Cartridges were just outdated, even at this point in time. Plus, they were costly to develop for and difficult to make. This kind of got Nintendo worried, and they knew they had to come up with something, a quick fix, if you will. Enter the 64DD's announcement. A whole year before the Nintendo 64 actually came out, Nintendo already had a peripheral in mind that was allegedly going to knock the socks off of PlayStation. And around the holiday season of 1996, a few months after the Nintendo 64's release, in fact. Granted, while it wasn't going to bring the Nintendo 64 up to speed technically speaking, it was incredibly innovative. It was supposed to make all the games bigger and better. It was supposed to allow gamers to update their cartridges whenever they wanted to by the simple fact that the DD was connected to the internet. Not only that, but it featured other things as well, such as content sharing, online interactions with people, online services such as email, chat rooms, online play, all thanks to RadNet. I don't know what the fuck. Which was a special collaboration between Nintendo and Cento Giga, who they've worked for before, but we'll talk about that another day. Oh, but it doesn't end there. Countless awesome games were also coming to the Nintendo 64 DD. Games like Super Mario 64 2, Fire Emblem 64, Earthbound 64, Zelda 64, god damn it, why do you have to all name them? Kirby 64, and motherfucking Final Fantasy 7 was supposed to come out for this bitch. But of course, that never happened. I'm not even done talking about the features that this was supposed to come out with. So let me just briefly lightning round this shit, because there's a lot, okay? Okay, so Spectator mode, watch other people play online. E-commerce, shop for shit online. Online magazine, read the hottest shit from Nintendo. Beta testing, play levels from games that have yet to come out. Music distribution, listen to music on the DD, sometimes even songs that haven't even been released yet. Holy shit. Message boards, and of course, surf the goddamn web. I mean, sheesh. Yeah, I guess in today's standards, it's not really too impressive. But this was the fucking 90s, 95 even. This was all being announced during that time. The majority of people in the United States didn't even own computers at the time, so they couldn't even do this shit. But hell, the 64DD apparently can. So I'm sure with all these exciting promises that even the PlayStation couldn't accomplish, this thing must have sold like hotcakes, right? Well, no. I mean, obviously not. You're watching this video, for fuck's sake. The thing is, the 64DD didn't release in 1996 as Nintendo had promised. It was released 4 years after their initial announcement, 1999, and by this point, PlayStation 2 was already announced, and the Dreamcast was also released around the end of 1999. So it was a major misstep for Nintendo strategically, but what really hurt the consumer's interest was the sheer roundabout way of purchasing the fucking thing. You needed to mail order this sucker in, but not only that, you had to pay a monthly fee of $25 for the next 12 months, a total grand slam purchase of $300, which I guess if you're paying for 12 months is more digestible of a price. And admittedly, the starter kit this came with also was packaged with quite a few things. Not only did you get the 64DD, but you'd also get 6 games bi-monthly, a year of internet service, and a buttload of other things. So I guess that's fine, but like I said before, other consoles were just over the horizon, so barely any consumer was really interested in this thing. Not only that, but the games that came out were honestly not too exciting, save for maybe F-Zero's expansion and a few other tiny notable mentions, but that's about it. The real premature death to this 64DD project was the fact that Nintendo announced the GameCube just several months later. Like about 9 months later, in fact. In the end, aside from the innovation that the online services brought in with the 64DD, there wasn't honestly anything too grandiose about it. All the games that were announced for the 64DD, all the ones that were worthwhile anyways, were already on the base console. Without the use of the 64DD, everyone knew that this hardware was outdated. Consumers were just too smart to get suckered in. Sure, it was attractive at first, but 4 years after being announced, barely anyone cared about it. Nowadays, it's just a collector's item, and I guess it's getting more love more than it is back then. I guess that's kind of tragic in a way. Oh well. So with the previous video made on the 64DD, some of you might be saying, wait, did you say Mario 64 too? The fuck is that? While it is true that the 64DD was going to be the host of Mario's new adventure, the eventual, I guess, announcement of there being a sequel to Mario 64 was in August 1st of the year 2000 over at Space World. A tech demo was shown off titled Super Mario 128. To most of you, that may sound familiar. It is one of gaming's biggest mysteries, right up there with Half-Life 3, I'd argue. See, while the tech demo was nothing more than that at the time, there was some talks by people within Nintendo, most notably Shigeru Miyamoto, that Super Mario 128 was the direct sequel to Super Mario 64, which I guess makes sense seeing as how the title is the double number for 64. I don't know. Does that really make sense? I just sort of wrote that in the script and I'm like, is that really... I'm wondering, does that really make sense? Super Mario 128 footage shows off little tiny Marios lifting boxes and revealing a new Mario underneath. Then that Mario lifts another box and well, the cycle continues. This continues until there is 128 Marios on screen, hence the name. Then a bunch of wacky shit happens, the map changes shape, boards turn into pizza for some fucking reason, I guess because he's Italian or whatever. After this little tech demo, some interviews with Miyamoto around 2002 revealed that Nintendo was continuing development for Mario 128, and that it would be a future title for the GameCube. In 2003, the game didn't show up at E3, and, well, Nintendo stated that the game was too innovative and too godlike, and they didn't want any of their rivals to steal their ideas. Okay, I guess. More interviews with Miyamoto continued to confirm 128 being a game, but still nothing was shown at 2004. With Miyamoto really hyping up the game, saying that they've been developing it like a submarine. It's hidden, it's moving, and it's dangerous, and it'll be emerging soon to stun the world with its awesome innovations and all that shit. More interviews and more well, nothing later, and still no real announcement as to when or where the fuck Mario 128 was going to be released. The common misconception has some people to believe that Mario 128 was just recycled into Mario Sunshine, which isn't true because Miyamoto talked about Mario 128 even after that. In the end though, Miyamoto eventually retconned everything he said and stated that Mario 128 was merely a tech demo to show off the GameCube's capabilities. Well damn, what a tease. So while we never did get Mario 128, whatever the fuck game that was supposed to be, if ever it was going to be a game, there are many things about Mario 128's tech demo that helped establish the future Nintendo games that we know about, like Twilight Princess and Mario Galaxy. And of course, more obviously, Pikmin. The game as a whole was never released, but maybe in a way we all got little bits and pieces of Mario 128 and some other Nintendo titles, but we just never knew about it. That's kind of a wholesome thought, don't you think? No? Well, I think so anyways. Before the disappointment we now know as Fallout 76, there actually was a real dedicated MMO Fallout game planned on being released, though it wasn't being made by Bethesda at the time. Instead, it was developed by Interplay and Masthead Studios, and Interplay, if you don't know, were the original creators of Fallout. The game was set to take place 3 years before Fallout 2, and was meant to take place in California, just as previous games had done so. This project actually started out around 2006, which was the height of the MMO craze, what with World of Warcraft just about to release their first expansion right around the corner, and the player base showed no signs of stopping. Everyone was in on that MMO money train, and Interplay thought that they could get some good head-ass money, which is something they actually desperately needed. See, Interplay wasn't doing so hot at the time, so making a successful MMO was something they definitely needed to bank on. However, they knew it was going to be risky, filing an 8K form, which was basically Interplay's way of saying to their investors, yo, we're gonna do some dumb shit and it might make us all rich, or it'll kill the company. Interplay even asked Black Isle to make the game for them, but they were like, nah bro. About a year later, Bethesda bought out the rights to the Fallout franchise entirely. This was a double-edged sword for Interplay. On one hand, it pretty much guaranteed Fallout survival into the next gen, but on the other, it kind of made the development of Fallout Online more difficult. Now, Bethesda was calling the shots, not Interplay, and they did initially allow them to make the MMO, but only if Interplay showed results, as in, they needed to prove they were developing the game, and they needed to raise at least $30 million for the project to continue. During this time frame, Interplay claimed that they had created a map, fully textured, that was over 65,000 square miles, or roughly 170,000 kilometers for you non-humans. Speaking of which, there were other races you could play as, such as mutants and ghouls. Every race was supposed to have their own starting zones and unique storylines. NPCs and objects were already placed around the world. Towns were supposed to be driven by players. There were guilds and social centers as well as PvP. But no matter how much progress they made, Bethesda grew impatient and decided to take legal action against Interplay for not keeping up with their end of the deal. Interplay technically didn't own Fallout, so they basically sued them for copyright infringement. Things were settled out of court, and so came the end of Fallout Online, at least at first. See, after that debacle, the original creators of Fallout actually really liked what they were working on and decided to try again with what they called Project V13, which was Fallout Online's original project name. However, this new iteration was going to be done by Interplay through crowdsourcing, and this time with Black Isle's help. It was supposedly an original post-apocalyptic online shooter. Unfortunately, not much has happened after the Kickstarter campaign. Black Isle has since dissolved as a company in 2014, and 2 years after the campaign started, it pretty much has no updates ever since. Fast forward to 2018, and we have the marvelously disappointing product that is Fallout 76. In some ways, it is sad that the original creators of Fallout weren't even allowed to make their own Fallout MMO, but at the same time, it's really hard to say if the MMO was going to be any good or not. Was it going to be some marvelous revolution that Interplay needed, or was it just going to be a total waste of resources that Black Isle feared? Would it have been an innovative MMO that could have rivaled WoW, or was it just another MMO cash grab? Nobody can really say for sure, But there is some hope, I guess. The Fallout MMO's code was discovered by some weirdos, I don't know how, and they decided that they would make their own iteration of the Fallout Online universe, and now there's an MMO Fallout game that you can play for free, but it's really not the most polished thing in the world, and barely anyone plays it. Oh well, at least we got Fallout 76, right? Right? My initial thoughts with Project Hammer was that of a joke, because Project Hammer kinda was for a time. Whenever E3 came around, there'd always be that one mention of, where's Project Hammer, or will Project Hammer finally be released? It's that one title that didn't really make a splash, but its intentions were, in a sense, kind of bizarre. A hardcore Wii game being developed by Nintendo intended for Western audiences? What? But of course, the story itself wasn't too much of a joke, considering there are accounts of Nintendo of Japan being incredibly racist, and the project hit a record low when they took a morale survey, which proved nobody was happy with the project at all. It's hard to say what Project Hammer was, but considering the bits of gameplay we do have and the info that was given at the time, it was said to be a hardcore entry into Nintendo's growing family of exclusives, and it was meant to utilize the Wii's then innovative motion controls. Yet in the end, the developers couldn't make the game any fun, according to everyone who basically touched the game anyways. At the time, it was being developed by Nintendo's American Developing Division, known as Nintendo Software Technology, or NST. It was being headed by senior Japanese staff, which was a poor choice on Nintendo's part, seeing as how they intended to make a game that satisfied the more hardcore Western audiences, yet it was still being directed by Japanese members who basically controlled everything about it. This, unsurprisingly, led to a lot of conflict. The Western team wanted to make the game a certain way, while the Japanese heads just kept shutting them down and insulting them, stating how they weren't Japanese, so they couldn't understand proper game design. After a ton of conflict like this, the game was totally revamped to a much more cuter game called Wii Crush, which never saw the light of day. After the decision by higher-ups to can the serious, hardcore gameplay to instead a more kid-friendly kawaii version, a large portion of the staff left and began slinging accusations towards Nintendo and how poor they handled this project. Shortly after, it was cancelled, and the director of the game was fired due to the Japanese seniors blaming him for the cause of the game's failed development. Wow. What assholes. 5 years into development, all wasted due to some asshole racist from Japan, though this sort of thing actually happens quite often. With a few more cancelled projects I'll be talking about, you'll learn soon enough that Western game development and Japanese game development usually don't mix well. Now, due to the failure of Project Hammer, NST is no longer allowed to develop any Nintendo AAA titles, yet they still make games to this day nonetheless, just nothing spectacular, though there is some hope that they'll have their chance in the spotlight someday, seeing as how their latest game was actually Captain Toad's Treasure Tracker. But still, that's a game meant for a more kid-friendly audience instead of what they were intended to develop for, that being the hardcore Western audiences. Ah well, only in Japan, I guess. Stop me if you've heard this one before. Japanese game developer clashes idea with Western developer, leading to a disagreement and ending with cancellation of a project. It's happened before, and goddamn, it'll happen again in the future. Why am I mentioning this? Because that's exactly what happened with Scalebound. If you don't remember Scalebound, well then, what the fuck? Are you a fish or something? Like, seriously? Anyway, Scalebound was a game developed by Platinum in collaboration with Microsoft. It was set up as one of Microsoft's big dick first-party projects alongside Crackdown 3, Sea of Thieves, State of Decay 2, and Halo Wars 2. Hideki Kamiya came out on E3 to announce the project himself, and he was one of the head honchos of the project. It was a game about a boy and his dragon. A dude that looked a little too old to be looking this young, and looked way too much like that DMC Dante, which is kind of weird because now DMC's Nero looks like Dante from the DMC game, but that's Devil May Cry 5, and it's fuck it, whatever. There was flight combat, ground combat, and fucking multiplayer. That's pretty sexy. With a studio like Platinum, you've pretty much guaranteed quality and high-octane action. Substance, however, is one of their weakest points, I'd argue. See, Platinum is known for making short games that are about 6 to 10 hours long, but these games are meant to be played over and over again with new content every time. This title seemed to be something bigger than that. It was definitely one of their most graphically impressive games and ambitious games that they'd ever done. It was massive, and it got even crazier when they later announced 4-player online co-op. One notable thing about this trailer, however, was the stuttering. See, Platinum is known for being anal with their games. They prefer frame rate than quality, so seeing this was kinda jarring. Yet, this might have actually been the reason why there was such a huge schism between Platinum and Microsoft. Apparently, Microsoft was demanding some features in Scalebound that Platinum didn't like. See, there were definitely performance issues that Platinum was dealing with, and that's what delayed the game so many times and prevented them from showing up at one E3 conference. To improve certain aspects of the game, it's rumored that Platinum wanted to get rid of a few features, such as multiplayer, but clearly that's something that Microsoft did not want. It's a game presented as a AAA big-budgeted game, so getting rid of the multiplayer aspect of it was just a huge big no-no from Microsoft. Honestly though, this is just a speculation. Neither company has ever come out to state why they decided to depart. And actually, if anything, this really seems to be like it was a forcible move by Microsoft, seeing as how they were the ones running the project all along. Also, they've begun to delete any trace of Scalebound even existing on their YouTube channel, so clearly there was some bad shit going on underneath. Insider info apparently stated that Microsoft kept interrupting and halting the project almost constantly, which infuriated the team and Kamiya, the project's director. And if you follow the dude on Twitter, then you know that he has one hell of a temper. Even the way Kamiya talked about the way Japanese devs compared to Western devs seemed a little toxic. Aside from that, there was apparently a ton of stress within the team that seriously demotivated them from even touching the project. Overall, it was just a tough mix just to get to work together. On one hand, you're talking about a company that's all about style and fun, while Xbox is all about technical marvels and the future of gaming. It was literally a mix of business versus pleasure, which just can't ever be together. Aside from having the stupidest fucking name ever, LMNO was a game noted as that one game that Steven Spielberg wanted to work on, but then decided that he has a career and was a waste of time. EA Games first announced their partnership with Spielberg around 2005, and it was described as a first-person parkour game that implemented RPG elements and supposedly a deep plot involving the player and an alien girl named Eve. What is it with sci-fi female characters being called Eve? I'm getting really fucking sick of it. The game's basically revolved around the main character freeing this alien girl from some government institute. As the game progresses, your interactions with her change the way her character is shaped. She could either be a real cunt or a real softie. Eve apparently couldn't talk, and she was only able to speak through images she could telepathically send to you, like a storm cloud signifying that she was in danger. She also had this extra joint in her leg, and there was this whole grand plot that was supposed to slowly reveal that she was, here's the twist, a human from 10,000 years into the future who traveled back in time. Aside from this grandiose plot, there were also plans of there being multiple endings, a new form of combat, a new innovative way to control characters, and a multitude of ideas that all pointed to the game's end of development. 5 years after announcing their partnership, and EA unceremoniously laid off the team developing the game. When asked as to why, the dev team all pretty much said the same thing. There was just too much shit being crammed into one game all at the same time. It wanted to redefine movement, redefine characters, redefine playability. It wanted to make a heartwarming story with multiple endings, gameplay never before seen, and a ton of other shit that just slowed the development team down more and more. And after 5 years, they barely had anything to show for it. It's not all storm clouds though. Spielberg did end up producing a game with EA known as Boomblocks, and the innovative parkour first-person movement thing, well, that was shown off in Mirror's Edge. So that's something, right? I like to think so. You always gotta look for the positive parts about these cancelled games. Yeah, I like it. Esports. What a time to be alive. Holy shit, we got fighting games, MOBA games, mobile games, puzzle games, and whatever the fuck Amazon was trying to make with Breakaway. Okay, so quick side note here. I had no fucking idea Amazon had an in-house game studio, like at all. I just kind of found out about it while researching. But yeah, apparently Amazon makes video games. One of their largest endeavors was Breakaway, which was this sort of strange hybrid esports game that tried to be an action brawler, MOBA, Rocket League, base building, class-based shooter thing. Yeah, it sounds real confusing and all, but in reality, the game itself wasn't very innovative. As with most of the games I'll be covering this month that were canceled, you'll soon learn that it's the ambition that often kills the project. But with Breakaway's case, it was actually how safe it was in terms of standard gameplay that made it really insignificant. It was a game Amazon had a lot of plans for, again with the plans of it being a big esport, even so far as to implement certain tools within the game to make it easier to stream online, specifically on Twitch of course, because they own it now. The ambitious ideas were there, but never really implemented. It was just kind of meh. Taking a quick glance at Breakaway and you'll see what I mean. Judging from what I personally saw with the game, I saw something that kind of looked fun for the first hour, but let's be honest, we'd probably just uninstall the game quickly to make room for other, more inspired games. I mean, look at this roster. It's not really what you call imaginative. A knight, a cowboy, a Spartan, a Mayan priestess. God damn, I mean, really, the art direction, if any at all, is really wild and out there. Of course, I suppose since League of Legends got away with it, a ton of other esport games think they can do it, but if the gameplay doesn't match the aesthetic in terms of consistency, then it's hard for the players to really attach to the game. Who is this for? Is it for people who like fantasy, maybe sci-fi or high fantasy, or maybe, I don't know, westerns or fucking Aztecs, Mayan shit? I don't know what the fuck they were thinking, but it's really hard to say. Even League of Legends eventually reworked most of the characters to match the overall aesthetic of the game, while also keeping room for any other wild and crazy characters. Aside from that, this game barely got any buzz, and got poor reception due to it looking similar to Overwatch, which I guess if you squint hard enough you'd be able to see it, but I don't know. I mean, Overwatch didn't really invent cowboys or knights or big fucking armor, but sure, whatever the fuck you want to say, you horrible toxic community. Cry out more of those man baby tears. Maybe you'll get your way someday, fucking assholes. Anyways, after the game's public alpha came out, the dev team took a real hard look at what their product was, and they ended up just deciding they wanted to revamp the game to match an aesthetic they were going for from the start. Yet, after this, they quickly came to the conclusion that the game was ultimately not worth making. Considering how little coverage this game got and how ambitious the head honchos were about this game, what with them wanting it to be the next big esport, it was clear that it definitely was not gonna get there. Oh well, maybe next time, Amazon. Or not. I don't care either way. Getting real sick of this esports shit, honestly. I love Sweet Home. There's no joke behind this. I just seriously love this game. Considered as one of the greatest survival horror games ever made, and often cited as the father of all horror games, Sweet Home is a game made exclusively for the Famicom, in other words, exclusively in Japan. It's loosely based off of the 1989 movie of the same name, and boy do I mean loosely. It has you controlling a small crew of filmmakers trying to uncover the mystery behind a mansion, whose owner apparently hid away several of his precious frescoes around the mansion just before he disappeared. The film crew consists of 5 different characters, all with their own unique abilities that help open new paths in the mansion or solve different puzzles. The trick is you can only control upwards to 3 characters at a time, so some of the crew members have to be left behind to explore other parts of the mansion. Innovative can hardly cover what Sweet Home really was. Groundbreaking is more like it. The game was directed by Takuro Fujiwara, who was the mind behind Ghost and Goblins, Bionic Commando, Strider, and of course Mega Man 2, so you know you're gonna get a really good product out of the resume alone. Funny enough, the game was so good, people at the time thought that it was better than the movie, which is funny because the plot of the game ended up being wildly different than the plot of the movie. Okay, so I keep saying that the game is good, but I never really explained why, huh? Well, aside from the RPG elements, the game featured a multitude of things that today's horror games owe thanks to. Things like scattered notes across the mansion to unfold the backstory, jump scare mechanics, QTE, yes, fucking QTE sequences in an NES game, or rather Famicom game, item management, puzzle solving, and multiple endings, but really, you just have to play the game itself to really get a sense of how great it is. Oh wait, you can't. can you? Yeah, the game never released outside of Japan, not just because of the fact that it's based off of a film that nobody outside of Japan would understand, but really more so of the game itself and its contents. It had gruesome imagery, and I know what you're thinking, gruesome? Really? It's an 8-bit game, nobody would give a shit. But seriously, there are some graphic images packed into this game, especially when they were trying to keep that family-friendly brand. Not only that, but it was also an RPG, a genre at the time that wasn't very popular in America, at least according to Nintendo. Thankfully, there are fan translations that you can find online if you can spare the time to find an NES emulator and the game itself. I highly recommend checking it out. It's a friggin' masterpiece, man. Starcraft, RTS game made for PCs only. I said PCs only! It's a hardcore game played by hardcore motherfuckers, so when Blizzard thought about taking Starcraft's original design and just throwing it all out the window just to make a stealth action game for consoles is straight up fucking crazy. Well, that's what Starcraft Ghost was about. Announced first in 2002, Starcraft Ghosts was supposed to be this grand introduction of Nova, a character within the Starcraft lore that was reintroduced in Starcraft 2 just about 8 years later. It was set to take place about 4 years after Brood War, and the player took control of Nova, a ghost agent who had gone through a memory wipe unbeknownst to her. Nova was supposed to infiltrate a Terran base where they were conducting a secret experiment called Project Shadowblade. There, she would uncover a horrifying conspiracy and learn more about her past. Okay, I hope that summary was interesting to someone out there, because I really don't know shit about StarCraft. Regardless of that, I am interested in stealth games, and I love them to bits, so seeing this game being developed by Blizzard got me real intrigued. This is not Blizzard's MO, however. They tend to stick with RTS or RPG games, so it was strange that they would want to develop something that was outside their realm of understanding. The truth is, however, Blizzard barely touched the project. Apparently, the idea behind Ghost actually didn't come from Blizzard themselves, allegedly, but actually Nihilistic Software, who were greatly influenced by stealth games of the 90s. Blizzard saw this as a great opportunity to break into console games, as they've had interest in doing so before, but were far too busy with Diablo 2 at the time. Nihilistic, very passionate about the project, wanted to take the burden away from Blizzard and told them that they'll develop it, so long as Blizzard provided the cinematics, and Blizzard agreed. Nihilistic began working on the project, and diligently so. They had implemented a ton of different ideas and game mechanics that made the player not only feel like a badass ghost agent, but also as if they were playing a StarCraft game, despite it being a completely different genre and on a different platform. Things went well in production until, well, Blizzard wanted more, as with most cases of these cancelled games. Blizzard wanted the game to implement more features than already shown, and because of the development time being so open-ended, Nihilistic had a ton of free time to just experiment and try out new features that Blizzard wanted, but they never really focused on one mechanic to polish and fine-tune. Things got especially weird when Splinter Cell came out the same year as the game was announced, inspiring Blizzard and giving them way more ideas to throw at Nihilistic. It also didn't help that Blizzard kept changing the producer for the project, so not once was someone fully caught up with the game's development progress. Then, in the summer of 2002, a large portion of Nihilistic's development team quit. Seeing as how they had more work than they could handle, Nihilistic decided to bring in Swingin' Ape Studios to the fray, developers of Metal Arms, a glitch in the system, which is a fucking beautiful game. Oh my god, I should seriously talk about this game sometime. Anyway, shit got more hectic when Blizzard asked if Nihilistic could add a multiplayer mode, which they did, and it was pretty ambitious. I won't go too into detail, but one game mode that really stuck out to me was one where you had to control a moving objective and defend it against other teams that could also control the moving objective. When the objective reached one side of the map, that being the ally side or the enemy side, it would plant itself down and the team would have to defend it from the opposing team. Sound familiar? Like, I don't know, a payload objective? If StarCraft came up with this first, would that mean Team Fortress 2 was ripping off ideas before Overwatch? Also, the multiplayer was technically supposed to be a class-based shooter, so that really strengthens the idea. But anyway, things spiraled out of control since the introduction of multiplayer. Swingin' Ape was bought outright by Blizzard, and Nihilistic stopped giving a shit about the project and ended up leaving. The game is now postponed indefinitely. By 2006, Blizzard was in no way going to develop the game. Not only was the next-gen consoles coming out, so that meaning that they'd had to rework the whole damn project just for the new generation, but they were also at the peak of World of Warcraft's success. The game, while not cancelled, was most likely likely never going to see the light of day. Again though, it is technically on hold, and if Blizzard ever decided to, they could just start up the project again and make Starcraft Ghost into a reality. But honestly, the demand isn't really there, what with stealth games not being as popular as they used to be, and with Blizzard focusing on so many other projects. In the end though, it's all about Blizzard. Will Ghosts ever come out and be its own thing, or will it forever remain a ghost, a remnant of the past, a dead project still lingering onto Blizzard Studios? Who knows? Guess only time will tell.
Oh Santa Claus, when oh when will I get Mother 3, aka Earthbound 2? When oh when? Mother aka Earthbound 0 came out for the Virtual Console, but that was on the Wii U and nobody gave a shit. So when, Santa Claus, when will I ever have my Earthbound 2, aka Mother 3, official Nintendo release? Why would Nintendo hate my favorite series so much, Santa Claus?
Well, that's a good question, little gay boy.
Holy fucking shit, it's Santa!
That's right, me, Santa Clausito. Son of a bitch. You want to learn about Mother 3?
Oh yes, Santa Claus, please!
Well, you're delving into things far beyond your understanding, little gay boy.
What?
You see, Nintendo doesn't actually hate Mother 3. They're just too fucking busy to translate a game that's difficult to translate due to its coding.
What does that mean, Santa?
You see, it's too hard for your tiny child brain to understand, kid. See, translating a video game is far different than translating, say, a movie. You'd have to get into the game's code in order to fix up the text, leading to some more issues. It's especially difficult when you have to translate a game like Mother, whose text is so very wild and expressive. It also doesn't help that the game is programmed to have only a certain amount of characters per line in the text box, making it even more difficult for the translation team to work around.
Wow, Santa, how do you know all of this?
I read it all from the fan translators themselves on a Reddit post, of course.
Fan translators?
Yup. Even they admit that it was super fucking hard to translate the game. It took them several months of hacking just to get the game working properly with their translations. Talk about dedication.
Wow, so this game's already translated?
Yep, 100%. And it was done very well, I may add. It was incredibly professional and near perfectly executed. Not only that, but the translations are free, and anybody can simply get a ROM of Mother 3 and play it themselves.
Wow, Santa, wait, is it an official Nintendo release though?
Oh, no. In fact, the team behind the fan translations tried sending Nintendo their code and the translations directly, even so far as handing them the copyrights and the ownership of the code. But Nintendo expressed no interest. Stubborn, naughty boys.
So it's not licensed by Nintendo?
Nope.
Oh, then that's alright. I don't want it.
What?
Yeah, I don't really care about fan translation.
But it's fully translated and it's free.
No thanks.
Huh. Really?
Yeah, I'll just wait till it's officially released. After all, I know it'll come out soon.
Oh, kid, didn't you just hear what I said? Nintendo's too busy to be working on a cult game that'll barely get them any money for the effort spent. Just get the fan translations.
I'll wait. It's fine. I have hope.
Well, I hope you won't be waiting for too long, you dumb little shit.
Yeah. Yeah, me too. Oh, hey, wait, Santa Claus?
Yes, child?
Why was Earthbound 0 released then? If it was a difficult thing to translate, then why did Nintendo decide to release that?
Simple. They did translate it. Like fucking 20 years ago, even. They just never released it because, I don't know, who cares, honestly? Now go to bed, you little shit.
Joy to the world. the Lord is come. Let earth receive her King.
Ah, America. One of the greatest fucking countries in the world. Trump is so cool. Look at him. What a rad dude. What better way to celebrate Christmas, this American exclusive holiday, than to just huddle up by the campfire, have your kids around you if you have any kids, or your spouse, perhaps a significant other, family, dogs, nestling up to you, cats just scratching at your asshole, have a little cup of coffee, and just sit by the fire, sniff that coffee, get a good whiff, and then play some motherfucking Metal Wolf Chaos! Okay, so this is kind of cheating, but Metal Wolf Chaos is the next entry on our holiday gifts we never gotten series. We'll be talking about the greatest motherfucking American-ass game that America never got. And I say that it's cheating because, well, this game is coming out in America, just not this year. But really, the fact that this game hasn't been released sooner is just a national tragedy. Why? Look at this fucking game! Metal Wolf Chaos is a mech action game released in 2004 and developed by FromSoft. Yep, same guys who made Dark Souls came up with a game where you play as the president of the United States of America and a giant fucking mech who's trying to stop the vice president from taking over the country with this giant other mech, all culminating in different parts of the United States. These guys made this. I'm sorry, but I really do find this game stupidly amusing, and it kind of makes me sad that I have such a short amount of time to talk about it. It's probably one of the coolest games out there that was never released here, which is so weird because this game was fully voiced in English. Not very good voice acting, but it adds to the cheesiness, I would say, and it really adds character to this game that's already full of character, like an overabundance of character. I guess I should talk about FromSoft's involvement in this game and how they were super embarrassed that this game exists because they thought Americans would find it offensive, or how 9/11 kind of stopped this game from coming over. But honestly, I just want to show you a cutscene from this game and let the game speak for itself.
Metal Wolf. Planning on wiping out New York this time? You enemy of the people, I, Richard Hawk, won't let you get away with it. I, Richard Hawk, will uphold American justice without fail.
Yeah! Suck on my missile punch!
I won't lose, and the reason is Richard Hawk and the last great American hero.
It's gorgeous. That's just beautiful. The game grew a cult following in America despite it never being released here, and well, fans of the game have been clamoring more ever since. Well, thanks to Devolver Digital, we'll be playing this game soon enough. How soon? Well, how's 2019 do for you? Keep an eye out for this game, folks. You won't regret having this big dick bad boy in your stocking next holiday season. Trust me, you really won't. I guess while we're hot off the heels of the Mother 3 video that I made, we might as well be talking about Mother 4, which I feel is a bit more of an interesting game when compared to the others in the series. See, Mother 4 is not an official Mother game, as Shigesato Itoi has publicly stated many times that Mother 3 was the final entry to the series and there will never be any more future entrants. Well, that didn't stop these ragtag bunch of gamers from making their own Mother 4, and honestly, if it weren't for the fact that this game looked fucking gorgeous and amazing, I probably wouldn't be talking about this at all. Many fan fan games claiming to be sequels or remakes have disappointed me more than they have impressed me. And don't get me wrong, there definitely are some fan games out there that are simply marvelous, but never have I seen it to this quality and this dedication that the team behind Mother 4 has given. Not only did they make their own sprite work, their own art, music, UI, battle system, but the team behind it all actually built their own game engine just to make the fucking thing. The passion behind this is simply unquestionable, and they've garnered quite the following over the years. And yes, I mean years. The team's been at this game since, from what I can gather, 2010, but digging deeper, I found out they've been at it way longer than that. See, 2013 was the first time they'd ever shown the game as a trailer to the public, but further investigation into the Starman forums showed that this team has been assembled since 2006, and they've been working on this game for 12 years now. It's just a fan game. That's insane. And you can see the effort didn't really go to waste either. The game looks gorgeous and the soundtrack is so close to the vibes Mother gave off that it's near indistinguishable from the original composer's style. It was set to come out during winter of 2014, which of course didn't happen. And at first, there were no real issues with the game legally, but the team kept adding on and fine-tuning the game to make sure people got the best Mother 4 they never experienced. And well, sadly, they never will. Yeah, we all know how these stories end, especially when a Nintendo fan game is involved. However, the end result is actually what you might not expect. See, the Mother 4 team had some rocky bumps in the past. The people involved in the project have changed many times. Even the original composer left in pursuit of his own career elsewhere. This never stopped them, and neither has Nintendo. Though knowing that Nintendo has a harsh tendency of DMCAing any fan game made, even if they're not for profit, the team didn't want all that they've worked on to suddenly come to a halt. Not because infighting or drama or scandals, but because Nintendo said no. So to counter these issues, the team decided to no longer make a Mother 4 fan game, but instead make their own original game using what they've already worked on. It was a logical decision that would have really saved them the heartbreak later in the future when they did decide to release it to the almighty banhammer of Nintendo. Speaking of which, are you curious as to when this game will come out? Well, you're gonna have to stay curious because the game will not have a release date until it's totally ready to launch. In the meantime, I highly recommend following the Mother 4 website and Twitter. While the game won't have anything to do with the Mother series, the team has stuck with the name as it's the only name people know them for. They do post every now and again, and their last post was from September 2018, so hopefully we can enjoy their beautiful little game sometime in the future. Even though it's not a Mother game, I really don't doubt it being a fucking amazing ass game when it does release. Good luck, fellas. I mentioned at the beginning of this series the existence of the Nintendo 64 DD. Aside from having an innovative online feature and a dumbass way of purchasing the damn thing, the 64 DD also helped improve certain games and could expand upon a game's features. So there were games that could potentially do an expansion pack of sorts, and there were definitely plans for a few games to do so. However, because of the 64 DD's failures, this never really unfolded. One of those games to have said expansions was The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time. It actually wasn't going to just be one expansion, but two. One known as Ura Zelda, which literally translates to Another Zelda, and Zelda Gaiden, which translates to Zelda Side Story. While Zelda Gaiden ended up becoming Majora's Mask, Ura Zelda never actually came to fruition. Well, technically anyways, it's complicated. See, back in 1995, Ocarina of Time was in development. It first started out as a game where you control Link in a castle, and that's where the adventure was going to take place. But Miyamoto saw the true potential the 64 had. He came up with a much more grander story and setting after that, though the story was so grand and the setting was so huge that it couldn't have been contained in one game. At the time, however, the 64 DD was also being developed right beside Ocarina of Time's development. While Ocarina of Time itself was a huge game, for the time anyways, Miyamoto wanted to add far more and so decided upon making Ura Zelda, which could have added way more enemies, more quests, more dungeons, and the legendary beam sword ability, which was said to be obtained inside the unicorn fountain that was never seen in the final game, but was in some beta builds of the game, though that's just speculation. And yeah, keep that in mind, there's a lot of speculating in this video, though there are a lot of fascinating things in Aura Zelda though, such as the possibility of Link obtaining the actual Triforce as an item. What it did was unknown, but it was speculated, there's that word again, to give him the Beam Sword ability. There's also some text files within Ocarina of Time that talk about the Ice Medallion as well as the Wind Medallion, but it's hard to say where they were in part of the expansion, if at all part of the expansion, as some people also speculate that those were changed to the Forest Medallion and the Water Medallion respectively. Fiddling around with the debug menu of the base Zelda game also shows some pretty interesting content that was never really utilized in the final version. In the end though, nothing really came out of Aura Zelda. The fans were pretty pissed when they learned that the sequel or expansion of their favorite game was never going to be released, so to compensate, Nintendo released Master Quest alongside Wind Waker. Supposedly Master Quest was in fact Aura Zelda, but that's debatable. While Miyamoto had come out to say that Aura Zelda was finished and ready to play, Nintendo had a difficult time knowing how to distribute the expansion due to the 64DD's failure, so I guess instead of releasing it, they just re-released it as the Master Quest. But so much of the Master Quest doesn't really seem like an expansion, but rather more like a remodified, more difficult version of Ocarina of Time. There's no new dungeons, no new areas, no new monsters, really nothing new other than the layouts of the dungeons being different. If Aura was done and Master Quest was Aura, then why didn't any of the new content show up? It's not like we don't know there was going to be new content or not. There are many things within the game's files, as said earlier, that point to there being more to the game than shown originally. Well, I guess we'll never really truly know what happened with Nintendo and what they were planning to do with Aura. Maybe Master Quest was Aura, or maybe they did it as a last-minute effort to control the fans' burning passion for a true sequel to one of the most beloved games ever. There is that restoration project being worked on that is supposedly adding all the things Aura was supposed to add, but in my opinion it just kind of seems like they're speculating concepts that we don't really know much about. There's a lot about this game we don't know of, and I'm sorry that most of this has been, again, that famous word of the day, speculation, but that's all we could work off of. Good luck to the guys making the restoration though. I hope that shit doesn't get DMCA'd, but hey, you guys do you. While researching for this video, I kept asking myself, why hasn't anybody talked about this game? It's fucking Evangelion 2, like the sequel to one of the greatest animes ever. How is this not covered by all the anime cucks on YouTube with their wacky cartoon avatars that have a top hat and a hoodie and look nothing like them except maybe add a few 100 pounds? Well, it turns out there's little to fucking no info on this stupid game. Yeah, I was super excited to talk about this game as it was something that I listed for the series, but honestly I could barely find anything on this fucker. Well, I guess I can work off of what I do have anyways. Developed by Alpha System, creators of who fucking cares, Neon Genesis Evangelion. Also, fuck all of you who said I pronounce Evangelion wrong. Do you all pronounce evangelist, evangelist? Fucking morons. Fuck all of you. I'm pronouncing it dog shit from now on, okay? Motherfuckers. Evangelion, now dog shit. Happy? Okay? Cool. Anyways, Neon Genesis Dogshit 2 was made back in 2003 and was said to be the official sequel to the first Dogshit anime series, though it's really more of a retelling of the original source material through the eyes of several of the characters. It's a game that rolls up different kinds of gameplay into one package. It's a strategy, world defense, visual novel, dating sim, RPG game, which makes more sense when seeing the game in action. It all plays out with short cinematic cutscenes for each battle, which was highly praised by critics. However, what was more interesting about Dogshit 2 was the classified files. See, the creator of the anime, Hideaki Anno, was said to be extensively interviewed by the development team in order to solve some mysteries behind the lore. And if you've seen Dogshit, you know there's some serious plot points that need to be answered, and so when the team got all the answers they could eke out of Anno, the dev team hyped up the game to having all the answers the Dogshit fans wanted. And to their credit, there is an info dump that'll get any fan wetter than the fishes of Alabama. Why did I write that in the script? Yet the canonicity of the classified files is to be debated. Aside from that, there's nothing more I can say about the game. Well, except for that one part that Shinji got molested by that old fucker that barely does anything in the anime because he has the hots for his mom. So he dressed up Shinji up as his own mother and had him roleplay as Shinji's mom in a French maid outfit specifically made for Shinji, a 14-year-old boy, to roleplay this creepy old man's fantasies, where then afterwards he is suggestively sexually violated, but I don't think that's too interesting to cover. As for why this game didn't come out in the States, it's probably the same reason Cowboy Bebop's video game didn't come out in the States. The dev team probably thought it wasn't that interesting to American audiences. And while we consider dog shit an amazing anime nowadays, consider how many fans there were back then. I'm not saying this show wasn't big back then in America, but you'd probably agree with me if I said that this anime is way more popular nowadays than it was back then. It probably wouldn't have sold that much, and the Japanese game already had abysmal sales, so there's no way they were gonna bring it over here. Though if you are a dog shit fan, then honestly you're probably not missing out that much. Aside from the extra content and the addition of the F-type equipment for fan service, there's not much to get out of this game. And if you are curious as to what these classified files contain, well then you're in luck, as the community already translated the files into English, so just look for that and you'll find out every little lore things you've ever wanted to know, if it's even canon anyways. Akira is considered one of the greatest anime movies ever made, if not the most influential movies ever made. Personally, I prefer the manga, but whatever. With such a legacy, and the fact that it was a late 80s, early 90s movie, when, movies-based video games were pretty much everywhere and rampant, you'd expect it to have a ton of games under its belt, but in reality, it only had one game, and that was a subpar visual novel for the NES. Well, there's that pinball game, but that's fucking stupid. Nobody talks about that. Aside from that, there was one Akira game slated to be released in 1994 on the Super Nintendo, Sega Genesis, Atari Jaguar, Sega CD, and seemingly every handheld console afterwards if it succeeded. Simply known as Akira, the game's development started off in Black Pearl, and shortly THQ became their publishers. THQ, not really understanding the limitations of the Super Nintendo and Genesis, were demanding quite a lot out of the team that was damn well near impossible. There were also other games the team had to put into priority that led to more complications, and the final straw was the departure of the lead programmer. Ultimately, these complications led to the game's cancellation, and that's about every little bit of info we have on the game, except in 2014 when somebody finally came out and showed footage of the game. And when you look at the footage and you hear about the complications that this game had, you realize that the situation really sucks. This game looks like it has potential, a potential that could have rivaled the source material's success. According to a games journalist by the name of Phil Theobald, who has played the game at E3 1994, the game apparently had multiple kinds of levels and scenarios that made it incredibly diverse. There was a motorcycle racing level, a first-person shooter level, a beat-em-up level, a platformer level, and an isometric level. I mean, Christ, this game had it all, and it wasn't some bold claim either. With this footage out, it pretty much showed everything that Theobald was talking about. Another journalist by the name of Jim Gregory reported that the SNES version was pretty much going to be a traditional platformer, and that it would combine elements from both the film and the manga into the game. Sadly, the development stopped, and the game was no more. Again, it's a real shame, as this could have potentially been an innovative smash hit, the likes that no one had ever seen before. Or it could have sucked. Either way, we'll never really get to know for sure. You just gotta enjoy the little footage that managed to survive all these years, as it's the only known evidence of the game ever existing. Metal Arms, A Glitch in the System was a game released in 2004 and developed by Swingin' Ape Studios. It's a game I know most of you haven't played, and a video that I know won't get me a ton of views, but that's honestly okay with me. Doing a video on the cancelled sequel was honestly just a passion project for myself, as I actually really loved this game as a kid. I remember there being rumors that Swingin' Ape Studios was going to make a sequel for the game that I thought was one of the greatest games ever made. I mean, in hindsight, the game isn't really that amazing. I wouldn't call it a masterpiece, but I think it's pretty stellar nonetheless. The game has you playing as Glitch, a droid found in the middle of nowhere with a strange mark on his head, fighting for the droid rebellion Rebellion on the planet Ironstar against other robots known as the Mills. The gameplay is somewhat similar to Ratchet & Clank, what with you playing as a character who has an arsenal of weapons at his disposal, as well as a ton of different platforming sections with dialogue to match the same kind of starky, witty humor. Metal Arms was, and still is, highly praised because it's not just a game that has a ton of weapons and a ton of baddies to mow down. I mean, yes, there's a ton of that, but the game was friggin' amazing and huge. It was an odyssey. At first, you're underground fighting Mills in a mine shaft, then you're at your home base fending them off, then you're in the wastelands in a military base, and then you're inside of a factory, and then you're underneath the planet inside a new city, and then there's a chapter where you fight as a gladiator, and then it goes to space. There's just so fucking much packed into this game. No two environments ever look the same. It's also a game with a surprising amount of lore. Again, the world this game takes place in is known as Ironstar, and it is fascinating. It's a planet made of scrap metal and debris from space junk found on the edge of the universe, created by mysterious robots known as the Morbots, who are rumored to live within the planet's core. You never see the Morbots in the game at all. There's not even concept art of them. They just exist as these entities that created everything on the planet, even the droids. Plus, there's the little things, like this. It's so good. I'm sorry, I'm more gushing about the game than I am talking about the sequel that was canceled, and frankly I'm doing so because there's not much info on the second game, but rather just plans that there was going to be a sequel. See, for those of you who have played Metal Arms, you know that there was a cliffhanger ending with the one main antagonist getting away and escaping the planet. You might wonder why they left it off like that when they never made a sequel, and actually it has to do with the fact that when they first showed the game early on, it got a lot of praise. Swingin' Ape Studios was a new company at the time, so they pretty much had everything to lose if Metal Arms wasn't successful. It didn't help that their publisher, Sierra, was basically threatening them with shutting down the studio if they didn't come up with something within the next 2 weeks or so, and so they did. Within 2 weeks, they made a demo. Well, it's more like a proof of concept movie that showed off the game's performance and the idea itself, and then 6 weeks after that, they made a demo, a playable one. Can you imagine that? They just made this game within just 8 weeks of planning. I mean, yes, there was some concepts before, but Jesus Christ, just coming out with this shit at crunch time is, oh my god, I can't even imagine. I mean, yeah, it wasn't the full game, but it's still a demo, like a playable one within 8 weeks. Like, that's fucking nuts. So after the high amounts of praise, not only received by Sierra, but also the public, Swinging Ape felt confident that this game was going to be a big hit and their first real breakthrough into the industry. So while developing the game, they also started planning for a sequel, not one, but two, as a result of their then recent praise. And the game's story was designed and shaped in a way that made room for both of these sequels, making way for a new trilogy. The game was then released, and it met critical acclaim, yet the sales did not reflect on their praise. It was a commercial flop. This was in part of the failures of marketing, which there was none, save for maybe one forgettable commercial. Nowadays, nobody actually remembers the game, like at all, save for the people who actually played it. It was clear that there was a lot of love put into this game, and reading through their plans for the sequels, you can tell they put a lot of thought into the story as well. There were also a ton of concept and designs that were made for Metal Arms 2, alongside new characters and droids, but unfortunately, well, if you watched my video on that cancelled Starcraft game, you'll know what happened. After developing Metal Arms, the team went ahead and immediately started on the sequel, but stopped as soon as they were contracted to work for Blizzard and Nihilistic Studios for Starcraft Ghost. Yet, that game was also cancelled. Swingin' Ape was then bought out entirely by Blizzard, and most of the staff that worked on Metal Arms now probably work for Blizzard as of today. So what happened with Metal Arms IP? Does it just die too? Well, actually no. The Metal Arms IP still belongs to Activision Blizzard to this day, so I guess if they ever wish to do so, Activision could totally release a new Metal Arms game, though realistically, That's just not likely. The original creator of the game even tried buying out the rights to the game, but Vivendi, the first copyright owners and the publishers of the game, just didn't want to budge. After Vivendi was then bought out by Activision, well, I honestly don't even know if Activision realizes that they're sitting on the game's copyrights right now. Yet there is some hope, but it's kind of grim. In 2014, Blizzard acquired the trademark to the game, and then later in September of the same year, they updated the trademark again, but this time to include mobile games.
Do you guys not have phones?
Yeah, you guys all have phones, right?
Oh god. Still, the game is available on Xbox Live's Classic Store, so if you want to check out the game, you can totally do so for the low price of $10. Well, if you own an Xbox, otherwise it'd be, what, $360? There's actually a lot more to the story I didn't cover, so if you are curious, please check out the Destructoid article in the description below if you're interested, of course. Even though there's not going to be a sequel, I am very happy that I got to experience this game. It's fantastic, and it's one of those things I think I would have regretted if I never had in my childhood. Thanks a lot, Swingin' Ape Studios, and to all who created this game, every single one of you. You did a fantastic job, and it's a shame not many people got to play your game. Thanks so much. You made my childhood just a little bit cooler, and I appreciate that. The Wii menu was the dopest shit ever. I'm not even exaggerating. It was pretty cool, and if not, it was unique, you know? The 360 had its infamous blades, and the PS3 had pretty much nothing. But the Wii, it had channels, which I guess was a weird bastardization of apps, but not really. Anyways, these channels were, for the most part, pointless. They didn't do much, but they did help make the console feel more alive. Also, for clarity's sake, I'm not talking about the channels that had games in them. I'm talking about the shit like the Check Me Out channel, or the Forecast channel, or the more obscure Everybody Votes channel. The fuck is this? These channels are just filler, paperweight even, but it's fun, honestly. It's like little things you do when you're really fucking bored. Oh my god. However, there are some channels that never made it to the US. Take, for example, the Today and Tomorrow channel, which came out everywhere except the US. It was a sort of bullshit horoscope thing for people who still use horoscope bullshit for their daily lives instead of actually being adventurous or responsible for their actions or whatever. Then there was the We No Ma, which was kind of cool and kind of lame at the same time. See, Nintendo wanted to do this video streaming thing in collaboration with Dentsu, a Japanese advertising company. I say kinda cool because the concept itself is very homey and uniquely Japanese. Up to 8 Miis could be placed in your little home and they'd interact with each other, they'd eat dinner, watch TV together, etc. The local weather would also be reflected by the in-game's weather, so if it were raining where you were, it rained there too. And speaking of, the service also displays the weather and gives you the news. And there would even be instances where celebrities would show up to tell you about the latest episodes or shows that they're doing or movies that they were doing, and it's great. But then again, I do kind of think it's lame because, well, the main focus of the We No Ma channel was the streaming services it provided, mainly video streaming. Yet the videos they had prepared for people weren't really that exciting. If you were expecting something close to, say, I don't know, Netflix, well then you'd be dead wrong. There were no feature films or TV shows to watch, or really anything that Nintendo themselves didn't really approve of. All the videos you could see were selected or produced by Nintendo, so your options were incredibly limited. It was also very family friendly, so don't expect anything above the PG rating, or however Japan does their rating systems. Later on though, the We No Ma channel actually allowed its users to shop for things online, which is pretty cool, and I would say it'd be even cooler if this were on the Western Wiis. But then again, in reality, Amazon was a big thing here in the West. While I'm not well versed on modern culture in Japan, I'm just gonna assume that Amazon wasn't as big over there as it was and still is here. What with Japan's tendency of not really accepting Western technologies or services. Moving on, there was also the Television Friend channel, which really wasn't anything more than a glorified TV Guide network. That's basically it. I mean, you can stamp a show. Also, you can have notifications sent to you via email or text that alerts you when a show is about to start. I thought this was kind of a weird channel as it made no sense to my gaijin brain, but it turns out in Japan they don't actually have a TV guide channel whatsoever, nor was there even a guide button for whatever TV services they use. That shit's built into our American TV boxes, but not theirs. Huh. I thought that was interesting. Then there's Digicam Print Channel, which was a channel made in collaboration with Fujifilm. It was basically the same as the photo channel that the Wii came pre-installed with, but different in that you can actually print out these photos. You just tell Fujifilm which photos you wanted printed and they print it out for you and mail it. You could even order an entire photo album. It was also possible to print out business cards, which I hear is a big thing in the world of business in Japan, though it is kind of ridiculous that they'd allow you to have your me on your business card. Yeah, people are really gonna take you seriously with Mr. Spread Ass Cheeks on your card. Then there was the fuck, how do you say, Demae channel, Demae channel, or the more blatant food delivery channel. I mean, take a wild guess what you did with this channel. Finally, the last interesting Wii channel we filthy Americans never got was the Kirby TV channel. It's a weird little thing because this channel was only available in Japan and Europe. No New Zealand, no Australia, or Canada, or Mexico, or America. Like, that's all, just EU and Japan. I mean, Japan I understand, but Europe? Like, was the TV show really that popular over there? And that about covers every channel made exclusively to the outside world of NA. North America, that's what that means. I mean, yeah, there were a few video streaming channels I didn't mention, but they're not really worth mentioning. They just stream videos. What else do you want? It's honestly a surprise seeing how much we missed out on, but more so than that, it's weird to say this, but the Wii had an untapped potential of channels that they simply never went with. Most, if not all of these channels were in part business collaborations between Nintendo and that company. Imagine if they teamed up with Amazon and made a channel together, or if they collaborated with Facebook or Google or some other big name company. I feel like there could have been so much more done. Technically, the successor to the Wii channels was the Miiverse, which sort of brought everything together under one community, but that was so bare bones compared to the channels that the Wii had, which were a ton of fun to explore. I guess we'll never really know what kind of channels they missed out on. Only in our dreams. Oh, side note, I was told about this weird-ass Masato app by Nolan. His Twitter should be up on screen. It was a new subscription app for the PS3, and it was exclusive to Japan. I don't know where to put this on any video, but I might as well put it here. All you do is just have Masato from Neon Genesis dog shit telling you the news, and it was fully voiced and fully modeled, and fully customizable. For some reason. Well, I guess I know the reason. You could also get trophies out of this app, and that's it. It's kind of a weird thing. It came out in 2009, it shut down a year later, and it's totally fucking dumb, but hey, it is so Japan. Diddy Kong Racing was a beloved kart racer that could have rivaled Mario Kart, and personally, this was my preferred kart racer back then. I just thought the game looked prettier and had cooler characters and less bullshit power-ups, etc. It even had a cool story mode that Mario Kart still doesn't offer to this day. It was pretty ahead of its time, despite the fact that the game plays like total garbage if you play it nowadays. Yeah, it doesn't really hold up, but hey, the game did well and was highly praised, so of course it was warranting of a sequel, and that's exactly what Rare Studios had up their sleeves. Now retitled as Donkey Kong Racing, the game's one and only appearance was in E3 2001 and was slated to release in 2002. It was expected to have been shown in other game shows such as Space World 2002, but that never happened. See, Rare was really struggling for money at the time, and Nintendo began to show less and less interest in their games and started to give them less support and gave them less funds. Knowing that they needed more funds to develop more games, the head owners of Rare, Tim and Chris Stamper, went ahead and gave Nintendo their company on a platter. But shockingly, Nintendo refused. Rare was so close to being a first-party developer for Nintendo, but for some reason or another, Nintendo wasn't interested, which is especially weird when you consider that Rare was a juggernaut company that sold millions of units per game. So it's not like they weren't a good investment. Some rumors claim Shigeru Miyamoto's disinterest in the previous Donkey Kong games might have influenced Nintendo's decision, but I'm getting off track here. That's just a topic for another day. A year later, Microsoft acquired Rare, and that was seemingly the end for Donkey Kong Racing. Technically. See, it was impossible for Rare to make a Donkey Kong racing game, but when asked about the project, Rare responded by saying that the game was still in development, but it just didn't feature Donkey Kong and the gang anymore, nor would it be coming out on the GameCube. I mean, obviously. It also used so very little coding from the original prototype that it can barely even be considered a Diddy Kong racing game anymore. A little while later, the game was then renamed to Saberman Stampede, named after the old Rare series of the same name, but later in 2005, the game was cancelled. From the few screenshots we do have and from the game's description, it was supposedly a very innovative racer, and not just as a kart racer. It was meant to have realistic lightings, graphics, water physics, and an orchestral soundtrack to boast for the high-quality surround sound system. The game has you playing mostly as the DK family, but there were some hints of Diddy Kong characters coming back, like that weird blue racist elephant. The game's races themselves were constructed in a non-linear way and supposedly gave the player choice as to how they wanted to race, just like the original Diddy Kong Racing did, with the airplanes and the motorboats and the cars and etc. The difference being that this time around the vehicles were no longer typical cars or planes, but animals from the Donkey Kong Country series like Rambi the Rhino or On Guard the Swordfish and etc. Man, I keep saying etc a lot, that's getting fucking annoying. Each animal behaved differently depending on the size, like the bigger animals could destroy obstacles while the smaller ones can duck and weave through them. You could also customize the animal and upgrade them by collecting fruit. And man, there was a lot of thought and love put into this game. I mean, there was so little shown, but clearly there was so much planned. In the end though, it was all brought down just as fast as it rose up. For Rare, this wasn't a race to the finish, but a race to survive. And unfortunately, they had to take a detour. You know, while Octopath Traveler was being announced and more of the gameplay was being revealed, it started to sound vaguely familiar. Then they talked about how the stories of all 8 of the characters will intertwine and form one overarching plot, and that's when I realized, isn't this just Secret of Mana 2? Yeah, this might be a bit of an obscure one, but back in 1995, Square developed Seiken Densetsu 3, god damn I fought through saying that, which was supposed to come out in the West as just Secret of Mana 2. Now, for those of you who don't know, Secret of Mana is considered one of the greatest RPGs ever made, right up there with Final Fantasy VI. With such high praise and high sales, Square rightfully made a sequel, of which was never released outside of Japan. Which sucks because Seiken Densetsu was definitely my favorite Super Nintendo game of all time. As mentioned before, the game has some similarities to Octopath Traveler. You start the game out by choosing 3 characters out of 6, the first being the main character and the one with the most important arc. Each character's story eventually intertwine and blend together into one overarching plot. Sound familiar? Yeah, well, in my opinion, this game does the whole intertwining plot thing way better. Way better. Surprising, as this is a game that came out fucking 23 years ago. But to be fair, Octopath Traveler has a much bigger budget and fully voiced dialogue, so I probably shouldn't be expecting much in terms of diverging plots. So this game is pretty stellar, both gameplay wise and graphically. In every way, the game is far superior to Secret of Mana, so what gives? Why didn't Square budge and release this to everyone outside of Japan? Well, 2 things. Number 1, y'all might be wondering why the second game never came out, that being Seiken Densetsu 2. The thing is, Seiken Densetsu 2 is Secret of Mana 1, so there's that out of the way. And number 2, some of you might already be thinking that it was the fault of Secret of Evermore, which was a game developed by Squaresoft, the American gun-toting, hot-dog-eating counterpart to Square. And just like the company, the game was super American and filled with pop culture and references and all sorts of dumb American bullshit. This game has a lot of people frustrated, despite it being a critically acclaimed game. And this is due to the fact that it has this reputation of being that one Americanized Secret of Mana game in place of the real Secret of Mana sequel. I mean, keep in mind, a ton of Japanese devs thought that Americans were too stupid for RPGs, so that's definitely a possibility. But it just isn't true. There's also some theories that the translation team was being used for Secret of Evermore, which again was false. The fact of the matter is, the team assembled was hired specifically for Secret of Evermore. They were told to make a game and they made it. The reason it resembles and borrows a ton of mechanics from Secret of Mana was simply because those mechanics worked and they just wanted to use it for Secret of Evermore. So the real reason for Secret of Mana 2 never being released was just a technical one. If Square was going to release this game in America, they needed to fix up a couple of technical issues, including some bugs that were apparently pretty bad. So bad that they feared Nintendo of America wouldn't publish their game because it didn't meet up to their standards. Adding to the technical side of things, the cost of translating into different languages, and the fact that Square wanted to focus on making games than translating old projects, it all culminated to the game never seeing the light of day outside of Japan. Though, like Mother 3, there is a fan translation ROM floating around. It was incredibly well done and was considered to be one of the most sophisticated hacks of the time. I mean, it was the year 2000 and ROMs were incredibly popular at that point, so the translations was one of the earliest examples of ROM hacking, as well as a great fan translation that wasn't totally bullshit and terrible like those VHS anime tapes you'd get from that weird ass dollar store. So if you're curious about the game, go ahead and check out the game's translated ROM, or if you personally hated Octopath Traveler and you're looking for a better alternative, trust me, Secret of Mana 2 is fucking lit shit, my dudes. God, I'm gay. The one thing that I've learned from doing this series, aside from the fact that basically all games get cancelled due to overambition, is that often when a game gets cancelled, the game studios and publishers rarely admit that they've cancelled the game. They usually just let it die quietly, as if it were a mistake they never wanted to bring up again. That's just what happened with Rockstar's Agent, in fact, a stealth espionage game that's set to take place in the 1970s. It was being developed in 2003 by Rockstar San Diego studio, who would later go on and develop Red Dead Redemption. The only info we have on this version of Agent was the fact that it was being developed on the PS2 and Xbox, and that there were over 10,000 reference photos taken in Cairo for the game, though shortly after it was postponed indefinitely. Later in 2007, Sony announced that Rockstar would be making a PS3 exclusive for them, but it was only until 2009 that people finally found out what that project's name was and what the game would be. It was known as Agent, and it was being hyped up quite a bit, with Rockstar calling it a genre-defying game and one that Rockstar's been wanting to make since the very beginning. It was an enthusiastic project with a lot of promise built up around it, but only for a flash. See, after this, there was nothing on the title for 2 years. It was only until Leigh Donahue, a former Rockstar environmental artist, put out images online on their portfolio that we actually got a glimpse into the game. Then, just like that, nothing. Again, there was little to no information on the game whatsoever, and any mention of the game to Rockstar employees would either have them not answering at all, or them just saying, yeah, we're working on it, but we don't even know if we'll release it or not. Things got even more grim in 2015 when images of Agent were leaked again, but it was only images from when the game was being developed back in 2009. Jumping ahead to this year, and just about a month ago, the Agent trademark had been officially abandoned. This game is officially dead. No two ways about it. So, what happened? Well, here's the thing. Rockstar was at an all-time high as a company. Yes, they were already incredibly popular both by gamers and concerned parents and soccer moms as the gaming company that created Grand Theft Auto. But Grand Theft Auto 4's release in 2008 skyrocketed them to all new heights. This allowed them to freely work on all sorts of new projects that they wanted to work on. Things like Agent, which again was a game they really wanted to get on board with. But the issues probably started with the development of Grand Theft Auto 5, because it's not like Rockstar waited for their current projects to be finished. They actually started development on Grand Theft Auto 5 literally after the release of Grand Theft Auto 4. Not only that, but Red Dead Redemption was also a game in development that needed heavy focus, what with it being a game that had a huge immersive world and a long storyline with online capabilities as well. These are two very daunting games that were being developed. They probably needed a lot more members from the Agent team than they expected Agent to have, and slowly slowly, one by one, it became way smaller than they intended it to be. Not only that, but at the time, Max Payne and LA Noire were also games slated to be released just about a few years later. And when they eventually were released, the games didn't do too well in terms of sales. I mean, don't get me wrong, these are critically acclaimed games, and 4 million and 5 million units sold respectively is no small feat, but compare that to GTA 4's gigantic 25 million and Red Dead Redemption's 11 million, well, it pales in comparison. And that's not even including the juggernaut sales that GTA 5 had later on. Take-Two Interactive probably changed the business models to stop focusing on single-player only games, as they'd rather focus on games that would continuously bring revenue through their online community, a la Grand Theft Auto Online and Red Dead Online. There was probably no room left for Agent, which was most likely just going to be a linear, story-driven game like Max Payne. I think nowadays Take-Two and Rockstar Games don't have an interest for games like Agent or games like Bully or Max Payne or LA Noire. They were unique little projects at the time, but it would seem that the online market spoke louder than those who wanted a single player experience, and honestly that's kind of a bummer. So I've written a script for this topic quite a few times. I had to rewrite it here and there, but every time I rewrote it, I was never really satisfied with the results. And I guess it has to do with the fact that this game is something I'm very passionate about. I can't just translate the thoughts in my head to words. I need to get this out of my heart and out of my gut. Like, this is something I need everyone to know. The Shenmue MMO thing that happened back in 2004 was the weirdest, dumbest, stupidest decision that Sega ever made, and I can't fathom what their mindset was on with this fucking game. So if you don't know, Shenmue is a game that everybody likes to shit on. Everybody likes to say, oh, it's so bad. Isn't it weird that this game from back in 1990s was so fucking stupid and ugly and it controls bad? It's almost as if games age badly sometimes. I don't know. But anyways, I like this game quite a lot. But I do understand that there's fair, legitimate criticisms with this game. It can be very slow. It can be very boring. It's not for everyone. But for me, it was so innovative and it was so cool. And even to this day, I like playing it, and it's really nice. It's a nice, awesome adventure that is a pleasant ride. Yes, it is supposed to be like an epic drama, but it's not epic in the sense that it's like, oh, it's you versus the world or anything like that. It's just you trying to find out who killed your father, why did he kill your father, and a bunch of other kung fu stuff happens in between. So it is an interesting game. But it was a hefty cost for Sega to develop, nearly $100 million just to develop this one game. It was a ton of money thrown for a game that didn't really do too well in terms of sales. Yes, there was a lot of praise for this game at the time, but in reality, not a lot of people really bought the game. Even when the sequel came out, it was the same thing. Very high reviews, but very low sales. So with that decision in mind, it made sense that Sega would stop developing Shenmue and not continue the series. I believe there were supposed to be, I think, 6 sequels to this game. I could be exaggerating, but I remember reading one time that Yu Suzuki, the director of the game, wanted to make a ton of sequels, like an entire franchise for this game. It was an epic story that needed to be told in epic proportions. But again, it made sense to not continue. But for some reason, they thought it would make sense to go ahead and greenlight an MMO idea behind Shenmue? Like, seriously? It was weird from conception to announcement to fucking post-cancellation. So when they first announced this, it was a joint collaboration with them, Sega that is, with a Chinese development company that also made a bunch of MMOs, and it was supposed to be something between them, but when they came out with the trailer 2 years later, it was the weirdest thing. Like, mind you, an MMO for a Shenmue was already kind of weird. Like, the fans were already kind of like, that's cool, I guess. That's dumb, but it's cool. And then when they released the trailer, wow, was it bananas. Not bananas in the sense that, oh, it looked amazing. No, it was bananas because it fucking spoiled so many parts of the story. Here, let me give you a quick, brief summary of Shenmue, okay? Shenmue, it stars this guy. His name is Ryo. I forget his last name. Ryo comes back from school. Somebody kills his dad. He's like, why did you kill my dad? Okay, I'm gonna have to figure this out. Then he figures it out. It has to do with something, a treasure that his dad owned. And then he's like, wow, that's crazy. I'm gonna get some sick ass revenge on the dude who just killed my dad. And so he goes on this journey, but he can't fucking afford going to China, so he needed to get a job. He got a job, he got money. Some dudes found out that he has the mirror that this bad guy named Lon D wants, so the bad guy sends more minions to go after him. The kung fu shit happens, and then he's like, hey girlfriend, you're going to Canada, I gotta go to China because I gotta get some sick sweet ass revenge. The girlfriend's like, that's a dumb, really, but go for it. And then he goes to China. Then wacky adventures happen. But then there was this one scene. Now, I'm mentioning all this ordinary plain shit because this one scene, it's spoilers. If you want to play the game, please do. It's really good. Most of you won't because, fuck, I know you. Anyways, fucking most of the game is so normal. It's just you fighting against a bunch of minions with regular ass kung fu, regular ass shit. And then you get jobs. It's so boring. But then at the end, the big twist is that all this magical bullshit they keep talking about, you're like, that's kind of dumb and weird. But then magic actually happens at the ending of Shenmue 2 when a fucking sword just floats in the air. And that's like, holy shit, like that is the biggest revelation because beforehand there was never even a hint of magic, just dreams of this girl you had. And this ending pretty much solidifies that yes, there is magic in this world and Lon D is after it, and you hold one half of the magic that he needs to conquer the world. So stakes are stupid high because now you understand that holy shit, magic exists. What the fuck? Oh, but see, here's the thing though. We only knew that floating swords was the limit of magic. Yes, there's all this talk of like, hey, he can control the world, but we never saw how until this stupid fucking trailer reveals that the girl he's been dreaming about is some weird conqueror of China that can strike lightning bolts, and there's a phoenix. Like, what the fuck? And then Lon D turns into he controls a fucking yellow dragon and he does a Hadouken, and then this Final Fantasy character comes out of nowhere, and then he grabs the mirror, and then a bunch of other Final Fantasy characters come out. They do Hadoukens with Shenmue. Oh yeah, and Ryo rather. We find out that he can do Hadoukens, so that's a fucking spoiler. Apparently he can do magic shit. So that fucking sucked. And so all these spoilers, all this jump the shark moments, like, it's crazy how far they went. Like, clearly nobody consulted Yu Suzuki about the ideas of the game. They just grabbed his diary, scribbled a few fucking notes about key points in the plot, and they're like, yep, that's in the MMO, fuck you. And we don't even know anything about the MMO other than that there were like plans that you could get a job. You could like have a job as a waitress, or like you can cook, you can play mini games just like in the original Shenmue. Like that's so fucking exciting. I want to do that every day. I'm sure that's super rewarding. Like I love Shenmue, but I don't want to spend my time simulating having a job with other fucking weirdos in Japan and China. Like that is kind of fucking dumb. Yet and that's so confusing because, okay, so not only did you just jump the shark and you just told everyone every single plot point that we needed to know about Shenmue, like that's dumb. You fucking spoiled everything, whatever. But why did you think that it was a good idea and a cost-efficient idea to make an MMO? So you're like, okay, Yu Suzuki, we're not making Shenmue 3 anymore, or 4 or 5. Fuck that shit. We're gonna instead make a Shenmue Online. That's not gonna cost as much, even though servers cost a fuck ton, and developing this game is gonna cost a fuck ton, and nobody's gonna play it, so that's gonna cost a lot, and then everybody's gonna hate it because fans already hate it, and it's like it is the weirdest decision Sega has ever made, and nobody talks about it, and I don't know why. Maybe someday I'll actually get like in depth with this fucking video, or rather this topic, but honestly guys, like this is the dumbest fucking thing I have ever seen a video game company try to do. Like making an MMO is the dumbest fucking idea you could ever do, because it's so costly. Like unless you have like a solid idea of what you want to do, it is a dumb idea that nobody should ever do. But not only was this a bad idea in like multiple different areas, and everybody hated it, it was it's just like, it's like they really wanted to just get a fucking Magnum. They just wanted to get a Magnum and just end it all. And it's just like, why? It looked so bad. It's just, God, it was so bad. Hey though, Shenmue 3 coming to theaters soon at a theater near you. It's 2019, 20 maybe. I don't know. Nobody knows when it's coming, but hey, it's gonna be great. Everybody just say thank you to Yu Suzuki. Alright, that's enough. I'm done ranting. Goodbye. Before there was the Soldier Boy game console, there was the Ouya. And before that, there was the Phantom. He's a Phantom. Oh yeah, baby. What the fuck is the Phantom? I don't know. I actually haven't heard of this console ever before until a fan actually mentioned it on Twitter. It was a game console that was never released. And just like real ghosts, it's probably not real. Back in 2002, a man by the name of Tim Roberts founded Infinium Labs, a privately owned company that later announced they'd be developing a brand new revolutionary console that would be unlike any other. Now, before I continue, I have to mention the time period. See, the 2000s, it was around the time when there was an actual solidification of who owned the gaming market, that is, the big three. And as we know today, it consists of Nintendo, Sony, and Microsoft. But back in the 90s, almost everyone was making a console, from handhelds to computers to, of course, home consoles. Eventually, the console wars ended with Sony and Nintendo ending up the biggest competitors, while everyone else was left in the dust. Making a console around the 2000s was, and still is to this day, a risky venture, but even more nowadays, what with three of your biggest competitors being multi-billion-dollar companies, the Phantom had more promise than any other console at the time. Well, I should say some promise. Its main innovation was the idea that it'd be a console that did not require cartridges or discs, but through online purchases you could buy games. Sound familiar? Like really familiar? Yeah, well, unlike the Ouya, it was actually a big thing at the time. Nobody was really doing anything online related at the moment. Even the PC Master Race didn't have some dedicated service because Steam wasn't even that big, and when Steam was eventually out, it suffered from a ton of negative backlash during its first year. So an online service where you could buy and download games was definitely welcomed at the time, like GameTap. Does anybody remember GameTap? Like anybody? Man, I gotta make a video on that shit. Oh, Ooh. Oh, don't get me started. God damn. Anyway, not only that, but the Phantom also promised to be a console that could play current and all future PC games, making it an easy console to develop for, and seemingly made it an adaptable console at that. The service running the meat of the system, however, was the Phantom Net, which was the name of their service. Infinium claimed not only could you purchase games on Phantom Net, but you could also rent games, join or make tournaments, enter contests, watch the news, chat with other Phantom Net users, and connect with other game devs and publishers, whatever that meant. Ooh, man, that is a lot of bullshit. Around 2004, Infinium became a public company, and at E3 2004, they brought a prototype of the system, but a lot of people were really skeptical of its legitimacy, though that wouldn't be too much of an issue, as many prototypes often make their way to E3 and end up not being used in the future. Remember the boomerang? Yeah, so calling it a fake wasn't really too detrimental, yet as we'll find out, there's probably more layers to this than we thought. See, Infinium had been making a ton of release dates, first in 2003, but that didn't happen, then in 2004, but they missed that date again, afterwards 2005, but, well, surprise, surprise, nothing. And here's a bonus, the Phantom didn't show up at E3 2005, but finally, in 2006, Infinium ended up pulling down any mention of their console from their website, and in early 2007, they claimed they couldn't carry out orders properly, so they canceled it altogether, which I guess sucks, but at the same time, I'm not so sure. I think the concept of a console that doesn't require physical media is still fascinating to me, but so far nobody has ever been successful with that business model. Even the Steam machine isn't totally great by itself, but I think it can be done, if carefully and properly planned. The Phantom could have been a successful little concept. That is, if the console even existed. Yeah, remember back when I said that some people speculated the Phantom was a fake console at E3? Yeah, see, these claims aren't as baseless as you think. The company seemed a little fidgety whenever people mentioned it being a fake. Take for example Hard OCP, a website dedicated to all things PC gaming. One of their editors made an article claiming that Infinium was a fraudulent company that was ready to swindle unaware consumers, and this pissed off Infinium so hard that they threatened to sue Hard OCP for defamation, though these accusations became more clear when the fucking US government got involved. The US Securities and Exchange Commission, or SEC, filed a claim against the company for violating federal security laws. You see, Infinium was so excited and so confident about the console that they claimed their stocks would skyrocket by 3,000%, so they faxed this out to all their stock owners, telling them that they should invest more into the company. However, the SEC claimed that the Infinium was just performing a pump and dump, which is basically when a company says, hey, we're doing something really cool, buy our stocks, and then with them promising they'll be a cooler company, you buy more stocks and make their value go way higher. And then when they're at the position to do so comfortably, the company just turns around and says, actually sorry about that whole thing that was gonna make us really cool, we're not doing that cool thing anymore. Thanks for buying our stocks though, motherfuckers. So this, in essence, was what the SEC suspected Infinium of doing. So once they got into some hot water, Infinium ended up canceling the Phantom and Phantom Net. They decided then to just sell stupid looking keyboards and are now nowhere to be found. Last time anybody checked, they only had 3 employees, and their website was last updated 7 years ago. It was a real weird situation. Nobody really knows if the console ever actually existed, but hey, it's a story to tell. But man, those guys are probably on Santa's permanent naughty list from now on. Oof. One of the most requested videos I do for this holiday special was on the topic of PT, but I already made a video on that a while ago and I feel like I got everything out of my system there. Though there is one mystery I can talk about, and that's the mystery behind Silent Hill 5. Not Homecoming, not PT, Silent Hill 5, made by Team Silent. Did it exist? Well, let's dive a little deeper. See, after Silent Hill 4's lackluster release and lukewarm reception, there was a long period of time where Team Silent, the creators of Silent Hill, stayed, well, silent. Quietly, the team disbanded and eventually went on to work on other titles such as Siren. Afterwards, Konami hired Western companies to make the rest of the Silent Hill games, and well, we all know where that turned out. It wasn't the greatest time to be a Silent Hill fan, as many of them wanted to see Team Silent return and work on a new Silent Hill game, though honestly, it's hard to say what exactly happened to Team Silent. Depending on who you ask, you'll always get a different answer. The most common theory was that they were so disappointed in Silent Hill 4 that Team Silent decided to quit, though there are some hints from interviews with different game journalists that prove this might not be the case. Masashi Tsubuyama, director of Silent Hill 2 and one of the key members of Team Silent, had an interview with Eurogamer where he expressed his confusion as to why there was a rumor going around that the next Silent Hill game was being called Silent Hill Shadows, following that up by flat out saying that they were working on the latest Silent Hill game. He stated that it was being developed for the PS3 and the Xbox 360, then only known as the Xbox 2. This interview clears up the misconception that Team Silent just gave up after Silent Hill 4, and that they were already planning the future of Silent Hill. Even a week after this, there was an interview with Akira Yamaoka, the sound designer and composer of the Silent Hill franchise, as well as Masashi Tsubuyama, where they were asked if the Silent Hill 4 style was going to be the norm for upcoming Silent Hill games, in which Tsubuyama replied with, quote, "No, we won't be keeping this trend for the following sequels," unquote. Or quote. Man, I feel like a fucking dweeb saying that. Continuing this trend of interviews, we start to get a clearer picture of what exactly Silent Hill 5 was going to be. For example, when asked what the original scenario was for Silent Hill 3, Yamaoka stated that they couldn't talk about it because it was an idea they were going to use for the next Silent Hill game, and he hinted that it might not even be called Silent Hill 5, with Akihiro Inamura, programmer of the Silent Hill games, in the same interview stating that there was this concept of light and darkness that he was interested in developing. Inamura further elaborated by talking about how normalcy rotting around you can be a scary idea. Just as how Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Jacob's Ladder had done, Inamura was interested in making a bright and normal sunny day into a frightening experience, just as dark and dreary nights can be scary. 2 years after this interview, and it seemed like they were still working on this idea that Inamura was interested in, as Yamaoka continued to hit on the idea of fearing daylight as much as you would fear darkness. He was even working on the music at this point in 2006. It was around this time that Silent Hill Origins had been announced earlier at E3 2006. Climax Studios, the guys working on Origins, talked about how the game was somewhat in collaboration with Team Silent, but stated that Team Silent was too busy on their own project to help out Climax Studios. During this time frame, there wasn't much coming out of Team Silent or Konami about Silent Hill 5. I mean, keep in mind that the only hints at Silent Hill 5 had always come through interviews and such, but never official announcements or trailers or even teasers. It was just that one thing Team Silent was supposedly working on. Rumors started to spread after a lack of communication with the fans, and Tsubuyama said less about the game than previously, essentially saying that it'll be ready when it's ready. Finally, it was over. Team Silent was disbanded and Konami hired Western devs to create the new Silent Hill games. And before you start raising your pitchforks and start talking mad shit about how American developers ruined the franchise forever, let me tell you about Kenzie Lamar, a concept artist who worked for Double Helix, the guys who made Silent Hill Homecoming. He revealed to everyone on several outlets, mostly ones where his art was featured, that Konami was actually at fault for where the franchise ended up. According to Lamar, Konami was actually losing faith in the series for quite a few years now. And if that were the case, then personally, I would say that Silent Hill 4's poor performance sales-wise was the perfect opportunity for Konami to take control out of Team Silent's hands. This could have been what happened, as Lamar himself said that Silent Hill 5 wasn't even being developed by Team Silent. Konami apparently didn't like the Silent Hill franchise, but did recognize that it was doing way better overseas than it was in Japan. So to further appease the Western audience, Konami wanted to rework the entire franchise to be completely different and more American. This is why Double Helix did a poor job with Homecoming, as it wasn't their decision to make Silent Hill Western as fuck, less psychological, and resemble the movie, which did pretty well in America, I may add. It was the decision of Konami. When Double Helix and Climax Studios finished their projects, Konami was actually very happy with the results. In the end, you might think Konami killed the franchise when PT was cancelled, but in reality, it was doomed ever since Silent Hill 4, and that's just how it is. That's a bummer. Sorry about that. Merry Christmas, everyone, and happy holidays to the rest of you God-hating heathens. It's finally time we end the first annual Boosemas special with a bang. Not just one, not two, but 4 canceled games. The finale you've all been waiting for. It's not Half-Life 3, though. Everybody knows about that shit, so get the fuck out of here. We're talking about every Mega Man game that was announced simultaneously and killed off simultaneously by Capcom. Well, near simultaneous. See, I don't know if you guys remember, but there was a lot of Mega Man games that were announced back around 2010 to 2011, but then they were all pretty much killed off the following years. Those games include Rockman Online, Maverick Hunter, Mega Man Universe, and of course, Mega Man Legends 3. Oh boy, we got a ton on our plates today, folks, so sit back, relax, and enjoy these depressing ass meals we're about to dig into. Well, I guess depressing if you're a Mega Man fan. Everyone else, just make sure you get your cups ready and line up for those delicious Mega Man fanboy tears. Let's start off by talking about Mega Man's attempt at being an MMO. Why the fuck? What's with the MMO? Seriously, I just don't get it. But anyways, previously, I've mentioned a ton of other MMOs that have also been canceled due to many reasons, mostly because an MMO is a dumbass fucking idea, and they were all influenced by World of Warcraft. However, this time around, it wasn't the main source of inspiration for making a Mega Man MMO, but rather the climate of games at the time. See, during the late 2000s, we saw a rise of a ton of free-to-play games, most notably MMO games. These freemium model games would prove successful for some, but a failure for most. However, it was an attractive model nonetheless, as it proved to garner a larger fan base. Whether or not the fan base would actually pay for anything was up to the game itself, which often led to a decline in player base just immediately afterwards. Sorry for the history lesson, but I thought it'd be necessary to understand why Capcom was thinking about making a fucking Mega Man MMO. Anyways, let's move on to Rockman Online. It was announced in 2010 as a joint collaboration between Capcom and some Korean MMO publisher. Don't worry, they really don't matter. Like, at all. The game was near to completion, and Capcom held a contest where you could name 2 NPCs from the game. The game was supposed to take place decades after Mega Man and Mega Man X. The Maverick threat had since long passed, and Mega Man X was just a legend. Then suddenly, oh no, Mavericks came back. What a fucking shocker. With X and Zero gone, the UCA develops copies of X, Zero, and Duo for some reason. Really? The guy from Mega Man 8? What? And also copies of Cinnamon. What? Who? Fucking who? So basically these 4 heroes, I guess, act as just classes. They all can copy different Maverick abilities, but each of them acted differently. X being a character that could shoot out of his buster gun and charge his shots, Zero using his swords to slash enemies, and Duo being a heavy tank character that uses his fists. Cinnamon wasn't even mentioned during this time, but it can be assumed she acted as the healer class. You know, judging by the fan art, or sorry, the artwork. I'm sorry, this honestly just reads like it's some sort of dumb idea some 14-year-old in high school would think of. I don't know. There were also 2 factions in the game, the UCA and the URA, essentially the good guys and the bad guys respectively. The villains of the game comprised of both old classic Mega Man bosses and Mega Man X bosses, sprinkled with some OCs. Is this actually just like a DeviantArt post I'm reading? Because it doesn't sound good. Not at all. Anyway, the gameplay was going to play out as if it's like a classic Mega Man game, just, I guess, in an online format. I guess kind of resembling MapleStory, just with a Mega Man aesthetic. I will say that the concept sounds interesting, I guess in a charming, if I were a teenager, I'd shit my pants kind of way, but judging by the gameplay itself, it looked kind of cheap and probably didn't play well either. It probably played just as well as any other mediocre free-to-play MMO from Korea did back then. Well, regardless, we never got it. The company that Capcom was working with decided to reform their business model in 2012 and in 2013. The game was officially cancelled by then. Take that how you will, I personally think it was for the best. Now moving on from the MMO aspirations to hardcore badass American adaptations, motherfucking cock-sucking, shit-eating, cunt-punching Maverick Hunter, a badass motherfucking game your grandma will hate seeing you play. It's a game for men. Mega Men, motherfuckers. Yeah! Developed by Armature Studios, most recently known for developing Recore, the game was set to be sort of a reimagined version of Mega Man X, where this time around Mega Man was a badass motherfucker who had a human cop sidekick. Yeah, apparently it was going to be some buddy cop game where the sidekick apparently resembled Bruce Willis in terms of character. What? That's so fucking stupid. The game was also supposed to be a first-person shooter and was set to be a trilogy where by the end of the second game, X turns into the bad guy and it's up to Zero to stop him by the third game. Whoa, edgy as fuck, bruh. Not only that, but his gun was supposedly not going to be an energy buster like we're usually used to, but a fucking rocket launcher. Yeah, badass. Americans will love this, won't they? Well, that's what Capcom thought anyways. Not only was the game built for a Western audience in mind, but apparently it was an attempt to get a new audience into the Mega Man X franchise. You might be thinking, oh, I bet Keiji Inafune, father of Mega Man, would have been pissed about this project, but in actuality, it was the motherfucker's idea in the first place. He acted as the producer of the game and was the one that had a hand in joining Armature Studios with Capcom. Son of a bitch. One interesting thing of note, however, was the fact that Mega Man X's new suit was actually designed by Adi Granov, I hope I said that name right, the same person who designed Iron Man's suit in the movie. Honestly, it's a pretty cool design. I just don't think it suits a Mega Man game. Maybe if it were used for a different game or some other concept, it'd be better, but the fact that this is supposed to be Mega Man is kind of unbelievable. Probably not as unbelievable as Bruce Willis teaming up with Mega Man, but fuck it. The game was eventually scrapped in 2010, surviving only 6 months in development before someone finally spoke up and just said, yo, this is kind of a fucking dumb idea, dude. It was never revealed to the public officially, and the only bits of gameplay we do have are just proof of concept instead of actual gameplay. Capcom has gone on the record saying that they stopped developing the game due to this being a huge gamble for Capcom. Yeah, no kidding. But some people have suggested it was due to Keiji Inafune's departure, which actually led to simultaneous cancellations of not just this game, but of the next 2 games I'm going to be talking about. First up, Mega Man Universe, or as I like to call it, Super Mega Man Maker. Essentially, it was designed to be a Mega Man game that was made by the fans, as it involved players to create and customize their own Mega Man levels and their very own Mega Man. You could share these levels online with other players, and the characters you made actually had special attributes depending on what you gave them. So they could have had a higher jump, or if they, I don't know, had buzzsaw hands, they could shoot out buzzsaws, you know, that sort of thing. Also, there were several iterations of the Mega Man design used, as well as other Capcom main characters that could replace Mega Man, such as Ryu from Street Fighter or Arthur from Ghosts and Goblins. The game was shown off in September 2010 at PAX Prime, and then, after a few months of silence, the game was officially cancelled on March 2011. I gotta admit though, the concept of Mega Man Maker similar to Mario Maker really sounds like a solid idea, and it's one fans of the games definitely would have appreciated, though there were some heavy criticisms of the game at the time, mainly due to the ugly rendition of Mega Man and the fact that the game plays like total garbage apparently. With Mega Man 11 released, it makes me wonder if they try to attempt this concept again. After all, Mario Maker was a huge hit with everyone, and Mega Man 11, while it did have favorable reviews, didn't really sell too well, so that makes me wonder if they really would want to try this, so it's kind of hard to say what the future would be. One thing I can tell you though is how fucking dead Mega Man Legends 3 is. Oh yeah, baby, it's time for Mega Man Legends 3. The game every Mega Man fan was asking for and wanted from Capcom this holiday season, but was shortly killed after Keiji Inafune left. The game actually had quite a bit of buzz going on for a while, and I remember after purchasing my own 3DS, I was really into like any kind of 3DS news that was available, and Mega Man Legends 3 had always been this cool thing that always had something going on, from concept designs to fan contests. The progression of this game's development was so smooth, it was almost like dreamlike. In total, there were 9 events that were made during development of the game. These events were simple contests that allowed artists and fans alike to make their own bad guys or character designs. They could also vote for new character designs or just catchphrases for NPCs in the game, Easter eggs for the games, mascots, promotional ideas, and all sorts of shit. It felt as if it was a game developed by the fans for the fans. Even the early access beta that was supposed to come out, called Mega Man Legends Prototype version, was supposedly like a full release version of the game itself. It had you controlling the main character, I think his name was Barrett, as you do a total of 10 missions. After completing every mission, you could actually play around with the debug menu that basically allowed you to have fun in any way you wanted. It was a game that clearly had a lot of love and labor put into it, but as we all know, Well, the game was cancelled around the same time Maverick Hunter and Mega Man Universe was cancelled, which is especially scummy because Capcom themselves stated that the game's prototype version was supposed to act as a sort of way to determine whether the game was worth releasing or not depending on its sales, but the prototype version never released and Capcom decided to cancel the game entirely. All this due to one man leaving. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't think very highly of Keiji Inafune. The man calls himself the father of Mega Man when in reality he only designed the character and did not actually come up with the game's idea. Also, the whole Mighty No. 9 debacle probably left a very sour taste in most of our mouths, and boy, what a fucking debacle that was. However, I do think his passion for the continuation of Mega Man was definitely there. While not directly involved with most of these projects, he did produce them and waved his approval of the games. There was going to be a new era of Mega Man games ready to launch, but eventually they all fell flat, for better or for worse. It's hard to say really, though the one thing I can say is that Keiji left an imprint on Capcom, and Capcom didn't want to acknowledge it after he left. It was only until recently that they decided to continue the legacy of Mega Man. Probably in spite of Keiji's failures with Mighty No. 9, but hey, at least it's something. At least it's something, I guess. And so ends the Boosemas holiday special. What did you all think? Should we do this again sometime? What canceled games didn't I mention that you wish I did cover? Leave a comment down below. I always read them, and without some of you, I really wouldn't have gotten through these 25 days of hell. I very much appreciate everything you guys have done for me. Really, I do. It's been a great year. Thank you all so very much for watching. And thanks for the 70,000 subs. I haven't said it yet, but yeah, that happened, and that was really cool. I'll see all of you next time. You'll? Yeah, I'm getting so tired now. I love y'all so much. If you'll excuse me, I'm taking a week-long rest. You won't see me till next year, alright? Goodbye, everyone. Have a happy New Year's. Love you guys so much. See you later.